Hey guys, I hope you're doing really well today. Hope you're strong and I hope that you're healthy. I hope that you are encouraged and you've been strengthened by the people around you and by a God who loves you, who loves us all. Today's video is going to be kind of different, actually quite a bit different from the rest of them that have been on this channel here. I had a hard time this week putting something together. You know, it was just one of those times where I had trouble figuring out what to talk about, what to put out there, what to encourage you with, what to teach. It was just kind of a tough week, and so this morning, kind of last minute, I decided to do something totally different, kind of scrap those plans. So normally, what happens is I'll peel back the curtain a little bit, but normally what happens is that I'll spend a few days kind of writing out, typing out what it is that I'm going to talk about, later in the week, and kind of fine tuning it and figuring out just the right wording, and I'll have a script kind of in the background that keeps me on track of what I've written throughout the week to word it just right. Helps me not say the word a cajillion times, like that. But I thought that maybe this week, instead of doing what we've been doing, just to change things up a little bit, I'd get kind of personal, share a little bit about what God's been working on in me this week, kind of reminding me about. And I feel like there are some things that are coming from this week that might help us for the future. So it's been about 5 years now that it was in January, late January, and I got really sick. It started out as something simple, but it developed and continued, and I kept going to the doctor, and I just wasn't getting better. And long story short, I ended up developing the symptoms of a condition called vertigo. Vertigo is terrible. It's like living your life on a Ferris wheel, or one of those like tilt-a-whirl things that you see at the fair, and trying to do the rest of life normally. It's hard to focus on stuff. It's hard to think. It's hard to express what you're trying to say, kind of like I'm doing right now. But that was a really tough time. Through that illness that I went through several years ago, there was a 5 week period where literally I stayed in the same place on the same couch for 5 weeks. I just literally stared at the ceiling and hoped and prayed. I wanted to keep getting better. The only place that I would go for those few weeks was I would go to the hospital. I would go to a doctor's appointment. I'd go to another specialist's appointment, and we were trying to figure out how to mitigate these kinds of symptoms. But through it all, it just wasn't getting better. You know, we couldn't figure anything out. We went from doctor to doctor and specialist to specialist, and we kind of came across a plan on how to improve the symptoms, but there was nothing that fully made it go away, which can be really scary and really frustrating, because for 5 weeks, literally from sun up to sundown, the only relief that I got was in taking this medication that helps stop the dizziness. But basically what it does is it stops a lot of your senses and everything too, and it kind of shuts you down. So the only relief I got was when I was sleeping, but that was stressful because I didn't want to ignore my family. I didn't want to ignore my friends. I didn't want to ignore my work or the ministry that God had called me to. So it got to be really tough. So thankfully, after a lot of prayer and a lot of visits with the doctors and specialists and physical therapists, and I kind of went through the ringer there for quite a while. the condition has gotten under control a little bit better. But there are still times when those symptoms come back. And this week was a tough week for me, which is part of why it was so hard to figure out what it was that I wanted to talk about with you guys, what I kind of wanted to share. But this morning, I kind of felt like God was kind of whispering in that non-audible way, and I could be way off on this, but I felt this kind of leading of His Spirit that said, "Hey, just be real and just share your heart." So the past few weeks, I've shared a lot of stuff that is hopefully good and beneficial for your noggin, for your brain. And that stuff is really important. I mean, the questions that we've been looking at and answering are literally foundational questions that we need to be able to have an answer to. It's incredibly important. But I realized this morning that in spending so much time preparing how to say just the right thing in just the right way and just the right timing and piece it all together just right as that perfectionist nature that I have inside of me, I forgot about my heart a little bit. And so today, while I'm having some trouble sharing from my brain, I want to share something that's just kind of from my heart. I can't remember who it was that said this, but it's always stuck with me. Somebody, whether it was in a class or a conference or just a friend in conversation, said that the stuff that's in our brain is meaningless unless it makes that 18-inch journey from your head to your heart. We can know all the right answers. We can have the answers to a million questions, but if it doesn't affect our hearts, our emotion, our core, we see the heart in today's world as being kind of the core of who you are. And if we don't allow God's word and His truth to affect us to the core of who we are, we can write down all the right answers that we want to. But at the end of the day, life is not a multiple choice exam, and it's not an essay. And to get into heaven, that's not what God's looking for. He just wants for us to know Him and to be known by Him. So I've had this idea for quite a while to do something on a weekly basis. I've taken some trips with some of our teens in the past to a conference called CIY Move. And one of the really cool things that they've been doing the last several years is that they have been taking a chunk of time in the middle of every day to do this thing called a SELAH moment. Now, a SELAH moment is it comes from the Psalms, and if you're reading the Psalms, you'll read there. It's like a songbook. It's King David and others pouring their hearts out to God, just expressing what they're feeling, what they're thinking, what's on their minds, just being honest with God, which is a lot of what we've been talking about. But you'll see sometimes in the middle of those Psalms, you'll see off to the side, just a little 5-letter word. You'll see the word Selah. Now, people who study the Bible have looked for a really long time to try and figure out what Selah means, exactly what it translates to. The best guess that we have kind of come up with is that it was kind of a musical notation, right? Because these were not just read, they were played, they were sung, they were chanted. So that Selah was kind of like a pause, a musical pause, where in the middle of all these lyrics, it's like a really good song that you know and love, right? Where they've put out some really good lyrics, and then there's this musical interlude where they say with instruments what can't be said with words, or maybe just take some time to let that sink in. And so what's cool about this idea is that SELAH moments are those moments where we kind of push pause on our lives and we try to put to words those things that words can't say, if that makes sense. It's a way of communicating with God in the middle of rest. In the middle of doubt and confusion and fear, we kind of hit pause for just a second, and instead of speaking, instead of learning, instead of absorbing, we just listen, and we have that kind of personal conversation with God. What I was reminded of this morning is that I haven't had as many of those times. I'm a very kind of scheduled type of person, where it's just the way that I'm wired, where I like to start out my day doing this and then move into that and to the next. And with everything that's been going on, the schedule has just completely gone out the window, and it's been hard for me. And I'm not really great, to be honest, at or at least naturally gifted at this kind of way of communicating through media and through the internet, through avenues like this. So I'm playing catch up a lot of times, and I'm kind of learning as I grow, learning as I go, and it can be a little bit tough. And in the middle of all this, I realized this morning that I've been really focused about getting out there the message, the truth, which is important and which needs to happen and which is going to continue to happen, but it really doesn't mean anything if I don't allow the truth of God to make that 18-inch journey between my head and my heart. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put together something kind of like a SELAH moment. And it's going to be a little bit different. It might be really awesome for some of you, and for some of you it may not connect. But I think this is a really cool way to be able to just push pause on the day and to seek God in the rest. And if nothing else, I want to communicate to you today that God doesn't just care about what you know about Him. He cares so much more that we know who He is, and we allow Him that access into our lives and share with Him who we are. So in each SELAH moment, they take that word SELAH and they turn it into an acronym, and it stands for stop, exhale, lean in, ask, and hear. And so it's just going to be like a 3 or 4 minute thing. And maybe I'll even, if this goes well, we'll start putting them out on a regular basis. It's kind of cool. For people like me, it really connects and really makes sense. And a lot of our teens that did these in the past said that they were really helpful and beneficial too. So I'm going to stop this video and continue the next one. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'll put some kind of a little thing at the end to help you know to go and be able to click on the next video. This video that kind of explains what's going on is going to pause, and we're going to spend the next video just kind of practicing this SELAH moment, a time to push pause, and instead of focusing on just our minds, give us some time, give us a little bit of space to connect with God on a more personal level. So thanks for listening to my ramblings. I'm sorry if I'm a little bit disjointed today, a little unscripted, but I hope that in this realness and in this honesty, that there's some benefit for you. And I hope that especially that moving forward, these SELAH moments can be really something to help you grow in your personal relationship with Christ, because it's really not about religion and just doing the right stuff on the outside and knowing the right answers. It sounds cheesy, but really it is. It's about having a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. That's what changes lives. So I hope you're doing great, and without further ado, here or wherever it is going to be our next video here, the SELAH moment.